Cold and very wet, so it's really nice to be here when it's not raining. Arvin mentioned ITSM goodness. There's a couple of things here if you want to have a look at these as a background. Just gives you the view of what ITSM goodness is. Rather than me talking about it too much, because I'm going to talk to you really about services and service catalog this morning. What is it? What do we mean by it? How important is it to IT service management? One of the things I have found over the last few years is that I go to a lot of conferences. This weekend I'm going to the Pink Elephant conference in Vegas, and there's usually 1,000, 1,500 people in the room, IT service management people, and we ask the question, what is a service? And you don't get much of a response. Now that's maybe a bit cruel, because actually it's quite hard to define what this is, but it's one of the things I think is really important if we're doing service management, that we're clear on what we mean by a service, and that's one of the things I find that bogs us down a little bit in our approach. As Arvin said, you can Google me. I've been doing this stuff for 20 odd years, so quite a lot of experience, probably nearly 600 projects now. And lots of stuff out there on the web, so have a look at that. But my thing about what we try and do when we're delivering service, customer service in IT is, we get a little bit obsessed with all the stuff that we do. We've got different layers like infrastructure and applications and process and governance and standards and best practice and all sorts of things. But as soon as we lose sight of achieving the business outcomes that we're there to deliver and how we deliver that in terms of the customer experience, then we're missing a trick. And I think we're seeing at the moment, we're seeing a bit of a refocus in the whole ITSM world. I'd say we're almost in the kind of post-ITIL world. ITIL's still there and it will probably be reborn, but I think a lot of the things about it are being challenged at the moment, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think I'd like to see it being a lot more focused on these key things and these key principles. So that's what I'm going to talk about this morning. Excuse the English spelling of catalogue there. For a long time it has been a bit of a quest to try and find what the service catalogue is and what it means. It was mentioned in the original. Any of you here know about ITIL? Yeah. The very first books it mentioned it. It's been mentioned all the way through, but not really in any great detail. And for me, it's at the center, it's at the hub of what we do in IT service management. And if we haven't really understood that, then we're going to be struggling before we start. No matter how good we are with our tools and our processes, if they haven't got a kind of business mandate behind them, then again, we're probably going to be missing a trick. So this has been a little bit of a quest for some time, and it's still evolving. It's not quite finished in terms of what the service catalogue will look like. I think it will keep changing. I think it will transform. I think it will probably disappear quite soon. But it helps, I think, people in the industry to move from what was effectively the old world, the engineering world of IT, to what we're now in, which Charlie Araujo calls the retail age of IT. We're in a retail business now. We're in a supply chain business. We're not just technical people anymore. Can I ask the question, anybody like to come up with a suggestion on what they think a service actually is? Sorry to hit you with this first thing in the morning, yeah. Hey.
It's a group of configuration items that together make up a process or service.
A group of configuration items. Okay, it could be, yep. Anything else? No? I mean, I think that's nearly there. I mean, the thing is, it's not just one thing. I think it can be a number of things. I think it can be in some specific areas something very, very tangible, like a phone or a piece of kit. And we shouldn't hide away from that actually sometimes we are just talking about pieces of technology. We shouldn't try and dress it up as a service. But I think for a lot of the time we are talking about a combination of elements. Maybe not just configuration items as well, but certainly components that work together to achieve a result for our customers, your customers. combined. So I mean, I think when we're actually putting our catalogue together, we have to realise that we're probably dealing with different types of entities, different elements. And we can't have a kind of one-size-fits-all approach to this. Can you guys hear me okay, yeah? Yep. Just I can't. So I think that's an important question to ask, you know, what we actually mean when we're talking about service management. I think what a lot of what we do in particularly IT service management, customer support, all these things, when we've got lots of processes, we produce lots of documentation, we've got lots of tools, we've got lots of outputs. We're really there to help or to deliver better decision making. You know, we tend to see a lot of bad decisions made about technology based on the wrong criteria, and I think one of the key elements that comes out of doing this is that we've got a much better understanding of the value that we're getting from our technology and where it's delivering value rather than just what it costs, because that tends to have been the focus for a long time. How much does this cost? That sounds like it's too much money, we're going to change it, we're going to do something else. Whereas, you know, I think we should be looking at what things should we be running at commodity lowest level cost possible, and what things do we need to draw a bit of a fence round to say we need to manage this with some different criteria. It's not just the lowest possible cost that's the most important thing. Time to market, time to value, specific business knowledge, all those kind of things are really important. So again, if we're talking about building our services into a structure, we must be clear what it's there to do. And the whole kind of SLA culture that we've had over the years has driven a lot of the wrong behaviour, I think. It's driven behaviour that says, right, if we've got 8 hours to fix a PC, it'll be fixed in 8 hours. Not 8 hours is the worst possible case for delivering that PC. And that's why we have so much bad press from our customers about SLAs. They hate them. They don't want it to take 8 hours. They want it to be fixed as soon as it can be. But if we start telling them, okay, I was with a client a couple of days ago where I was sitting listening to calls, and the service desk said, yeah, thank you, we can't deal with that, we'll have to pass it to somebody else, and they're going to have 10 days to respond. And the depression and, you know, anxiety on the phone was absolutely tangible, where you'd expected it to be fixed very, very quickly. And maybe it was fixed within a couple of hours, I don't know, but the bottom line was, just by having an SLA, it suddenly produced this concept that it might take 10 days. So a lot of that kind of mindset has driven a lot of the wrong behaviour, and I think what we're trying to do these days is to kind of step out from behind our technology and go out and talk and engage and listen to our customers and our businesses to say, what is it you really need from us? What's the value? Where's the value in what we do for you? Not just we're going to provide you with stuff and we're going to measure 99.9% availability and that sounds like we're doing a good job. We want to know when the really important stuff is. We want to know when the key metrics or moments of truth in your business are, so that we make sure that we get them right first, and then we start to tackle, you know, other priorities within our business. But it's a challenging thing for a lot of people in IT. I know that. We have to go out and engage with our customers. We get a lot of discussion about these things at the moment. You know, what's relevant? Will we still be relevant? There's lots of hype, lots of marketing hype around about, you know, are we still going to be here in a couple of years' time? We've got all these new things that come in and scare the hell out of us and say, right, we're all going to be out of a job pretty quickly. That's been going on for about 4 or 5 years now, and not a great deal's happened. So I went to see an IBM service desk of the future in 1990, and they were saying, you know, a couple of years' time there'll be no service desks, all done, everything fixed, you know. And they showed me this place, and it was all beautiful ambient lighting. There was no calls. There was occasional light flashing, people doing crosswords. This is the service desk of the future. Is that what service desks are like just now? No, that's 24 years on, still going. But we have a lot of challenge about service desk. We have a lot of challenge about things like SLAs, and service catalog. And I do believe that service catalog is a transitional phase that we have to work through in many IT organizations just to get a sense of what's important. But within a few years' time, that itself will probably be gone as well. Many of you here done service level management, set up SLAs, discussed service catalog, yeah? Still fighting, still got the scars to show it. I mean, you get lots of challenges with it. I do go into organizations and see lots of what I call SLDs, service level disagreements. The longer they are, the more they represent the fact that they haven't actually been agreed. You know, it's just like, well, we're going to document all the stuff we haven't agreed on. Whereas if you can boil it down to, you know, a page or two, it's much more likely to represent something that's actually meaningful because you have actually agreed it. But you know, there's a lots of things that we need to tackle in terms of, I suppose, culture, apart from anything else. I suppose challenging across management lines, taking on difficult challenges that we probably didn't expect to take on when we first got into IT. We got into IT because we thought it was going to be about doing tech stuff. But actually now we're being asked to be accountants and marketeers and contract negotiators and all those kind of things. That's part of the job too, unfortunately. But that's the way it is. So, service catalog. What are we talking about with that? What does it really mean? A very simple way of describing it for me, and hopefully for you as well, is, you know, if we went into a restaurant and they didn't have a menu, and the waiter came over and said, what can I get you? And I said, right, okay, I'll have a, you know, Aberdeen Angus steak with a lobster on top and, you know, a bottle of 1964 Chateau Lafite. I'd like it in 5 minutes and I don't want to pay for it. Or I'll give you £5 for it. He wouldn't be able to say no. He'd have to go and find a way of getting that. And what we have is, you know, a menu in a restaurant gives us the opportunity to lay out what our services are, make it clear what's involved, but also really importantly behind the scenes, and I think this is important for what we do in service management, behind the scenes it gives us the, if you like, the directions and the mandate to work from. So, you know, what food to buy, what recipes to make. They're almost like the processes that are needed behind the scenes. And I see Service Catalog in the same way. It's a kind of front of house facing tool, you know, that we present to our customers. But behind the scenes it gives us all the kind of information we need to run our business and run our IT organization effectively. You know, we wouldn't go like this restaurant, we just go bust very quickly if it didn't have a menu. And I think if we think about it in that kind of multi-layered sense, that it's not just one, it's not like just a request portal. It's a tool that we can use to define what we do and give us the opportunity to bundle that up in a way that's meaningful for us and for our customers. I think we can get these kind of objectives coming out, better quality, better collaboration with our customers, particularly able to demonstrate value. One of my gripes with the old SLA culture is that it focused on the negative too much. It focused on, you know, we only are talking about what we do when things go wrong. You walk into the Lexus showroom across the road there, and you go over and there's a beautiful, you know, $60,000, $80,000 Lexus. The salesman doesn't come over to you and go, do you know what, after 4 years, you know, the brakes start to go, you know, but we're really good at fixing them. That's not how you sell something. That's not how you present or identify the value of it. That's part of the warranty that you talk about once you've signed the contract. And I think we've tended to do that in IT. We've tended to think about only the negative stuff. And a lot of this is about trying to identify and clarify the positive stuff about what we actually deliver in an organization, whether that's internal IT or external managed services. We need to be clear on how that technology and how that service that we're delivering is actually adding value and where it's adding value. And that way we're going to get a much better relationship with our customers. At a very basic level, it helps us to identify what IT and technology is actually doing. And again, we find that when we do this, organizations get a much better picture of, particularly if it's a large enterprise, sometimes people just don't know what the IT organization delivers. I was at a university a couple of weeks ago where they were just about to embark on quite a large web development project, a new area. And it turned out somebody said, well, hang on, we already do this in another part of the organization. And so they could just clone that. But because they didn't have they didn't have it written down anywhere, all the things that we do in one place, the people who were involved with it had no visibility of it. So having that documented in one place is really, really useful. There's other things there as well, and I'm sure you can read that stuff. But just back to this thing about what is a service, and to clarify, as we start to define them, it's really important. Yesterday flew London to San Francisco. It pretty much arrived on time. You think about what's involved in the service of actually buying an airline ticket. Lots and lots of different things. There's the ticketing, there's the online, there's buying your ticket through the web. You turn up at the airport, there's lots of airport systems, there's check-in, there's baggage handling, there's security, there's all the kind of air traffic control, obviously then pilots, planes, all that kind of stuff, huge amount of technology that we focus on. We expect it to work. If you said to me, the way that we talk about our SLAs in IT, if you said to me, do you know what, your flight today is 99.6% guaranteed to be safe. I'm not sure I'd have taken that flight yesterday. And IT skeptic, that's his point. But it's a really good one. You wouldn't actually, would you take a flight if it was at that kind of percentage level? No, you probably wouldn't. We expect the level of security and competence to be there. But actually what goes to make the service is all those things combined. Yeah, so all the things I mentioned is the whole service. And I was on a flight quite recently where they took off late, the pilot came on and said, hey, we've got a tailwind, we're going to catch up. It landed on time, but they couldn't open the doors. So the net result was I walked out of the airport late. Didn't matter why, what it was to do with, but I walked out late. And if you think about that in relation to your technology reporting, where we tend to focus on reporting on servers, applications, infrastructure, individual components, but actually the experience from the customer's point of view might be that it's not working. And we have to think about how we bundle up our perception reporting on that to capture the whole picture. Because if we go back to them and say, look, yeah, we did really good, everything's green, and in their perception it's not, that really sours the relationship that you have with them. So it's important to think about that in terms of the bundle, in terms of the combination of things, as you mentioned, that go together to make this the whole service. One of the other things that comes up a lot at the moment, and without going through all these bullets in detail, but I do hear this a lot, and I go and talk to organizations, and the customers of IT always go, these are the guys that say no all the time. These are the guys that stop everything. They slow it down. It's really difficult. I can just go down to the store and I can just go and buy a PC, or I can go and buy a service. Why can't I do that with my own IT organization in my business? And a lot of focus has got to be on making business IT much more easy to do business with, not just something that stops in the way. There's a real responsibility on business IT to protect its business and to manage risk and to make sure that the right stuff is bought and it's done in the right conditions. And I understand that because I've been working in it for a long time. But also there's a huge need to speed things up and make sure that we do things in a way that is still on a compatible level with the experience that people now have in their own private lives and in the kind of retail market. And it's a real challenge, it really is, because these two things are really quite diametrically opposed. The need to control, the need to manage risk, the need to hold on to stuff and make sure that it's done properly, against how long that takes and how it's perceived to slow things down. And there's no simple answer, but I think, you heard of DevOps? Yeah. So it's just using things like agile methodology as a way of kind of speeding up the service development process, simplifying, focusing on relationship, focusing on getting the right things done with the right people at the right time. But if you Google DevOps, you'll see quite a lot of interesting stuff. One other thing I just want to make absolutely clear about what I think service catalog and service structure is and why we should do it. You know, we said that it's a number of different components, there's a number of different stakeholders, so it's never going to just be one tool or one thing. It's going to be probably a database or a store of information that we use to generate other content. And there's not just one single entity that you can always say that's the service catalog. What I find in organizations is that they tend to have a number of things that they call service catalog that in fact aren't, or they're something else, or they have some other application. And if you're doing this, if you're building services and service structure, you have to be absolutely clear on your taxonomy right at the start, because that can save you a lot of time downstream just by simply having a clear definition that everybody works to and understands and follows in your organization. But if you go onto the web and you go and look at various courses, you'll see different expressions: service offering, service catalog, service portfolio, and so on. I think there's two things that we need to think about when we're defining services. One is, what's the structure of our service? And that effectively is our high level entity hierarchy. But you know, what are our services? And then we then populate that with something quite simple underneath to capture all the data. And if I do notice it takes organizations forever to try and get this stuff started, same as it was with configuration management, but we can make this nice and simple. You can do it in a day. You can do a workshop that just says, what are our services? We'll produce something. It might start to look really quite simple as a kind of high-level one-page view. Really important to have, you know, to start to generate simple things that people will recognize and remember, rather than simply 200 pages of documentation. And a very simple example of that, my own home in London, where next to the house we have quite a major bridge, a railway bridge and a road bridge combined, which has been crumbling for a while. It's been rebuilt, and for the last 6 months it's been closed. So all these signs for miles around our area saying road closed, that bridge is closed, road closed. It's on the TV and the radio, it's everywhere. Everyone's saying that road is closed. Don't go down it. As you come near to the bridge, there's these giant signs that are yellow and black. They just say road ahead closed. And our house is right next to it. The number of people that come up and drive up to it and they kind of go as if, you know, what's this? I've not been told about this. This is something new to me. But they've driven through. So people don't read stuff, or they choose to ignore it. And if you think in IT that by sending out lots of emails and lots of documents and project documentation and 200-page service catalogs that anybody is going to read it, you're completely mistaken in my view. And that's what we've been doing for years. We've been sending out stuff and going, yeah, we told them about that. But either willfully or just by black and yellow sign, road closed. The hell with that. I'm just going on with it anyway. So, we have to, that's why I think that simplifying things, into one-page views is really, really useful. It helps. It's something that you can then put in front of people and say, this is the brand, this is what we do, rather than this is a big document, this is something that you're going to have to spend a lot of time understanding. That's a kind of slightly older one. This is a fairly recent one where just spent time defining what the various business areas and business services that the IT organization is dealing with, some of the core and communication stuff that they will then produce, and also what kind of consultancy professional services that they actually produce. Really simple. And behind each of those there's a bundle of stuff that says this, it's not just an application, it's several applications and several servers and several service levels combined to deliver that into one bundle. And that's something that people tune into. They kind of remember what it is. They might not agree with it, but at least they remember what it is. Here's another one. This is a company in the UK. The previous one was an investment company. This is a company that digs up quarries and provides raw materials for bridges and all that kind of stuff. And that's the very high level view of it. We need to then build on that. And what I like to do, and I know that we're here today with a tool vendor, but what I like to do is just let's get all the information in that dumped into somewhere very quickly so we can move this forward, and then we'll stick it into a tool. but stick it into Excel or something. It just says, what is the information behind each of those services? Who's the owner? What's the SLA? Who's the customer? Who owns it in IT? What sort of support structure is there for each one? What components, what configuration items are used in those services? And that gets you started very quickly, and it also helps, I think, to build the right kind of information that goes into your tool. If you've got that kind of high-level structure, let me just go back to this, you can immediately use that on your ITSM tool to categorize at a high level what services your incidents and problems and changes are actually being logged against. And that gives you a whole sort of new business layer level of reporting that you didn't have before. So it's really quite useful to get started with that. The other thing is that once we've got those things, we can start to create other documents that come out of it. And that's where we'll get things like SLAs and OLAs. I do a thing what I call the CIO brochure, or CTO brochure, which is just something very simple that the IT director or service owner has got that says this is what we do. And again, it improves visibility, communications, and so on. And it might just look very simply like, a high level. This was actually taken from a Word document, so it doesn't fit to PowerPoint terribly well. But just really, really simple stuff. Starts with a picture. This is our high level service, and then you've maybe got half a page for each one. Here's the service desk. Here's our mobile service. Here's some other stuff. This is quite interesting because this would be, in an internal organization, this would be the finance service. So it's got several applications, several things that are combined into that service to make it effective, not just one application. And the service will only be up if those things are all working and available. Just watching my time a little bit here. The other thing is that when we actually come to look at what a service catalog is doing, there will be different levels of it. There will be different customers and outputs from it. So at the user level, they're just going to have a really nice simple portal. At the business level, they're going to have performance metrics. And internally within the IT organization, you're going to be looking at things like workflow and maps and configuration and technical detail. But the real value of this comes when we start to think about reporting. So once we've understood what those various elements are, we can then build our kind of weighting model so that we can start to report in a very simple way. We're not producing 200 pages of stuff that just nobody will read or nobody will understand. We're actually producing stuff that will be relevant and valid to our customers and businesses. And generally, they do respond to this. Depends how you present it, of course, but the more simple, the better. Just one final way of just getting across the message of what this does, and it probably fits in quite nicely with what you were saying earlier. If you think about the ultimate business performance of an organization at the top, and at the bottom we've got our IT and our technology that we provide for it. Now we understand that usually. We might have built something that says, here's how we get this stuff. We've controlled it, we know what it is, whether that's what we call that CMDB or not, I don't know. But we might have implemented some ITSM processes around it, incident problem change probably. But they're not really drawing a link between what you do in IT and what your organization or your customer's organization is actually doing. It's not kind of business-focused output. And what you get when you stick the service catalog on top, you do actually start to pick components from here, but turn them into bundles that actually then adds a huge amount of value to your simple processes. Like I said, if you just start categorizing against services on your ITSM tool, you'll get a lot much more value out of those reports and will be much more useful to your customers. We also know that by doing this and defining this, it makes it a lot easier for transition, new services coming in. The whole kind of portfolio management process is better and easier when there's something there for it to go into. I think we're good at creating projects, but once they're actually live, what do we do with them? How do we hand them over? How do we turn them into supportable projects? And we're still on the wrong side of the balance between the cost of creating and supporting most of our IT projects. The cost is still more on the supporting side rather than the creating side. So that's, we've got that much better defined at this kind of infrastructure, service management and services level. The thing that really makes a difference that once we start to define the services is that we can then differentiate those services in a much more value-based way. We understand what they are, and they will turn to something that relates much more to the needs of your business as a whole rather than just simply driven by technology. So this whole process is about bridging that gap between what we do in technology and how that actually impacts and results your customers and their business outcomes. And just one other way of thinking about what we do in service management is what I call ITSM triangles. We've got a little bit too process focused, I think, within ITIL certainly. I think we just have to think about how things relate to each other in particular. So, the service desk has to interact with different customers, and it also has to manage its own organization. And that's much more about culture and managing people and managing relationships. What I call this the ITSM, it's quite appropriate, engine, because this is the stuff that we use to drive our kind of event management and support management. And these things are very, very closely linked together. Really turning that into something much more effective and quality driven for continual service improvement, we really need to make problem management combined with good knowledge and good metrics. That needs to be effective, but underpinning it all, we need to have these different business definitions and different views clear to us in order that we can use this stuff effectively. And it's just a very simple view, but it does try and move away from just talking about processes in silos. I'm the incident manager, and I'm the problem manager, and I'm the change manager, and I'm the configuration manager. All these things, they don't exist on their own. They need to be integrated. Just finally on some of the stuff that I've been doing in the last couple of years. Consulting for 20 odd years, involved in the industry a lot, particularly recently, in talking about all the new stuff, all the threats, all the disruptive stuff, the cloud models, the social and mobile and consumerization of IT. I do that and I go to conferences and people are still talking about doing the basic stuff right. How do we really make incident management work? How do we get effective value out of our IT service management? And to me, we still haven't really cracked that, and that's why I just have some very, very simple information out there about what I think is important. And so number one is listening to your customers, talking to them, understanding what's important. Number two is the one we've talked about today, which is to define the structure of services and then move on to other areas as well. But if you want to explore that, it's all out there on the web, itsmgoodness.com. You can go and get lots of documentation. It's all free to air out there. But I do think that sometimes we talk too much about what we're going to do next, what's in the future, how do we deal with change in IT, and we're still at the same time talking about how we can do some of these simple things really well. We don't have enough practical guidance around that. So take a look at that. This is going out in Bright Talk, and also on Bright Talk you'll find that there's kind of halfway through doing a kind of webinar series around all these as well, which is free to air. I think finally the thing is that that we can talk about processes and they don't happen by themselves. We need people and culture to make them work, and working together is absolutely important. Culture is the thing that will kill process before it even gets off the out of the meeting room table. So we have to make sure that we are working in a way that has got some kind of mandate. I see too many organisations that are driven by metrics and KPIs and SLAs that don't have any relevance to what they're actually doing and the businesses that they're supporting. And we've got to make sure that we can draw the line between those two things. Interesting stats. A couple of years ago, research I was involved with that looked at about 400 CIOs and said, are you delivering the services your customers need? Can you demonstrate value? And would your customers agree? and 60% of them couldn't even answer those questions. Never mind yes or no. They just didn't know. They didn't have a mechanism to say we're doing a good job. So really a lot of this is about finding ways of drawing those things together. We understand the technology, we know how to make it work, but what we're not so good at is drawing together how it works and how it delivers value to our customers. Okay, I'm going to move on from there and hand you back. If you do have any questions, and these slides I'm sure will be available for you. One of the things that's going on in the industry I think that's really useful at the moment is that apart from the fact that things like ITIL the ownership has changed and it will be redeveloped, I think the owners now do understand this stuff, understand the need to do practical and basic information as well as value-based stuff and not just process-based stuff. But also there's lots of people talking about this and talking about it in social media. Go and have a look out there because there are lots of different points of view about how to make this work well and what's effective and how you can improve culture. And the word at the moment is customer experience, which is probably, to me, is something that's been there all the time and should have been there all the time. But we have to think about making sure that we're delivering the right experience to our customers and not just churning out processes and technology for its own sake. Okay, any questions? Did anybody understand a word of that, given that I've been speaking broad Scottish for the last 40 minutes? Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you for your time.